We cannot see what God can see. We can see to the corner, but God can see around the corner. And if you just trust him when all hell is breaking loose, if you trust him with tears running down your face, if you trust him through a bad season and a storm, and it's okay to be scared, you can have fear and faith at the same time. And so I had sat on a plane for about 12 hours, left the beautiful city of Dallas, flew to London, got out in Heathrow, walked the corridors, made the change, and then flew another 9 or 10 hours to Lagos, Nigeria. And then by car, I traveled out somewhere I had never been before to speak to over 1 million people. I was in the hotel getting ready for the event. Pastor Adeboye had invited me to one of the biggest meetings he does during the year. He's huge all over the world, but in Africa, it's unexplainable. And I was getting ready to go when I got a call. The phone rang. My son Jamar had had a heart attack, and the doctors were trying to stabilize him. And while they were telling me about it, he'd had a second one. And the airport was shut down for the evening, and we had to pull all kind of strings to get out of there. And I never got to preach to the crowd. One, because under battle, you always have to keep your priorities straight. Don't let the seduction of the crowd or the allurement of the masses make you forget about the commitment to the few. Jamar was my son, and I had to be there. And I wondered, Lord, how in the world could this be happening? They had rushed him into surgery, and it didn't look good. And I said, this is a 20-something-year-old young man who's vibrant, healthy, in good shape, not overweight. How could this happen? We want to understand everything, but we don't. So I flew for hours and hours, and all the while I stayed awake the whole time saying, God, spare my son, because I don't want to know the pain of losing my child. And we want to understand why. And I got to the hospital. I came down the hall, and he's laying in the hospital bed, and he said, I hear my daddy coming. And I walked in the room. I shaved his chest. I talked to him. I tried to get him ready for this surgery they were going to do, because they had to try to figure out where this was coming from, and the first one hadn't proven it. And I wanted answers. And I learned something. You don't get answers because you want them. That God doesn't explain himself. For that matter, the doctors don't explain themselves. I would have took an answer from anybody. They weren't explaining much because they weren't sure why he had the heart attack. They couldn't give me answers. And when I prayed and asked God, why did I have to go through this? He chose to be silent. And the real issue becomes, can you trust God when he doesn't answer? Because we want answers, and we're raised in school to seek answers. And then if you get the answer right, we reward you. And it makes us think that there's an answer. But sometimes life hands you stuff where there is no answer. Now, he recovered, and I'm happy about that. He really recovered, but my point in talking to you about seeking answers is that it's a dangerous thing to seek answers while you're suffering. That's like trying to diagnose a storm in the middle of a tsunami. You have to get to the other side of it and look back at it and see it in retrospect, because if you ask too many questions at the wrong time, you're not going to come up with healthy answers or no answers at all. And the frustration becomes a distraction, because what difference does it make why? You're still dealing with what? And if you're dealing with what, you can't worry about why. So you're dealing with what, and surviving what must take preeminence over understanding why. I grew up in a little Baptist church in the hills of West Virginia on the mountaintop, and we used to sing an old song, "We are tossed and driven on the mighty seas of time. Somber times and somber tempests oft succeed a bright sunshine. In the land of perfect day, when the mists have rolled away, we will understand it better by and by." Sometimes you have to realize that you have to settle to walk in the dark, to walk by faith and not by sight, to not ask God to appeal to your intellect. Because when you ask God to appeal to your intellect, you ask him to come down to your level. When his thoughts are above your thoughts and his ways are above your ways, he has to come down to your level to explain himself. And sometimes God is not interested in your intellect. He is interested in your obedience. Do you hear what I'm saying to you? Because obedience is proven best when you don't understand. If I tell my child, clean up the room, you don't get to ask me why. I don't have to explain to you, we got company coming over and we got this. No. I said, clean the room. Obedience is better than sacrifice. Obedience is better than understanding. And God is trying to teach us to obey him and to trust in the fact, get this, that pruning is not punishment. That you are not cursed because you had a bad day. That God is not punishing you just because you're going through suffering. They feel the same, but they're not the same. The intention is quite different between pruning and punishment. Pruning is the reward of having something of value. It's how God lets you know that you're valuable. He wouldn't prune you if you were a dying bush. Nobody prunes a dying bush. He prunes you because you're fruitful. But pruning feels like punishment, and if you're not careful, you will feel like you're punished, and if you will buy that you're punished, then you will believe that you're cursed. God doesn't cut to kill us. He cuts to heal us. I had to trust God when they cut in my back 4 inches and operated on my back, and I had to learn how to walk again. I had to trust God as I preached on Sunday mornings and couldn't walk. I went to Washington, D.C. and preached. I had to lay on the floor in the back of the church. The pain was so great. And then when they got ready to introduce me, I came out. And I preached, because when the anointing was on me and the Spirit started moving and the energy got up, it was like I had no pain. I only made one mistake. I sat down after I got through preaching instead of leaving. And when I sat down, I couldn't get up. And there in front of everybody, they had to help me up out of my seat. The one who preached power and anointing and glory couldn't get out of his chair. And this oxymoron between strength and weakness, between victory and being paralyzed, is the human experience. Truth and trust hold hands. They hang out together. We need both to see the crushing from God's divine perspective. We have to look at it from God's perspective to avoid our limited view. We cannot see what God can see. We can see to the corner, but God can see around the corner. And if you just trust him when all hell is breaking loose, if you trust him with tears running down your face, if you trust him through a bad season and a storm, and it's okay to be scared. You can have fear and faith at the same time. I was afraid for my son, and yet I had faith for my son. You can have fear and faith at the same time. Jesus said, which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, would you give him a snake? If you then, through all of your evil ways, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will the Father give what you need to his children? God knows what you need, even when you don't like what you need. That is crushing.
At TBN, our mission is to use every available means to reach as many individuals and families as possible with the life-changing gospel of Jesus Christ.
Thank you for helping make the gospel of grace go around the world.
Without you, we couldn't do it. God bless you.